Getting the early numbers could be the key to success when betting on the NFL. That's why we're here to react to the pinnacle openers and analyse where the market might move. Welcome to the opening line. Hello and welcome to another episode of the opening line. Week 14 is in the books and it's time to look ahead to week 15 and some of those early numbers on the board at Pinnacle. We're back to three guests today on the show. A welcome return to Rufus Peabody and, of course, Andy Molitor and Eric Eager are with us as well. Rufus, glad to have you back. I'll start with you. How's the past week been from an NFL betting perspective?
So NFL, it's funny that the two games I sort of brought up on the Bet the Process podcast last week were like in Arizona and like in Baltimore, and those won. But it was still probably my worst or one of the worst NFL betting weeks for me. I got some good numbers later in the week, and sometimes maybe I should just. I mean, I feel like I got really good prices on some things. Like I took I guess the other winner was Miami +7 at even money, but I got wait, Andy, yes.
Drew and I went back and forth on that. I think we couldn't decide who deserved to win that bet. I don't know if your breakdown has an actual. Because he had +7.5, and I feel like he deserved it, I guess, for getting a good number. But it felt like 6.5 bettors almost deserved to cash their bet too. It was just end of game variance.
Oh, who was better? I mean, like Kansas City, clearly in game grades, I think they were what? I have them 12 points better. I mean, Miami was a +17 in turnover expected points added, +17 in one game.
That helps.
The Chiefs are one of, if Miami makes the playoffs, the Chiefs are one of two teams the last decade to turn the ball over 4 times on the road against a playoff team and win.
That's a very specific statistic.
Yeah.
What's their ATS cover the next week?
Give
me some trends.
I only look backwards with trendy stuff like that. Forwards is just a net recipe for disaster. But it was funny, right? Like they should have probably lost the game if they weren't that much better than the Dolphins, but, and to your point, Rufus, they are that much better than Dolphins and they sort of played like it other than the noisy stuff.
Yeah. I also ended up loading up on Cincinnati. I think a lot of sharp, just because the numbers I was getting, I mean, I got +3.5 there, laying a little bit of extra juice, but at a time when that was well off market. And I actually liked I like that. I kind of lean that side anyway. Played a little Minnesota +7.5.
I feel like you should have got that one.
Yeah, I mean,
Tampa played down too, but boy, when it's just 10 points worth of kicks, that sucks.
I had a little Las Vegas. Basically, the stuff I added a little New Orleans -7 juice on Saturday. I mean, basically everything I added, San Francisco, Pittsburgh, I got good prices. They didn't win.
Sounds like a busy week. A festive Eric Eager. How was the week for you?
I think my favorite one of I was with you, Rufus, on Arizona. I thought that the Giants were just you were buying them or selling them at the very top of the market, and you were buying Arizona. I mean, Arizona hadn't won a game not on a Hail Mary in 2 months, right? So you were buying, and Arizona didn't even play that well. They basically got a couple turnovers. They stalled out in the red zone a bunch. But Daniel Jones, without any sort of movement skills, is not going to be a recipe for success. And then the other one that I really liked, and even I took it all the way up to -2.5, even though it closed at 2. As I like Buffalo. I thought that Buffalo was, when you think about Rufus, this is something we disagree on, I guess, numerically. Is I actually think wide receiver is creating separation is one of the two most important traits in all of football. And what we saw in that game was, Buffalo couldn't protect the quarterback. The quarterback wasn't throwing the ball into the ocean really in the first half of the game. And they said, okay, in the second half, we're gonna make Stephon Diggs win in 2.5 seconds or less and get rid of the football and see what happens. And I feel like top end receiver play can really, overcome a lot of those things, and we saw that in Buffalo. Now, obviously the tricky thing, and I think this is where the genesis of our disagreement here is, how do you divvy up that credit? It's sort of we know what it is when we see it. We know in Buffalo it's more the receivers, and we know in Kansas City it's probably more the quarterback. But in that game, Steelers were down players in the secondary, and the Bills just like I think really leaned into the wide receiver position and eventually paid dividends for them.
And so you make a good point with Diggs, and certainly in this game that turned out to be the case. But with all the data you have at your disposal with Pro Football Focus, I would tend to think you're probably right on this. What I looked at was basically the study I did was, I should say Cade and I did, was back like 8 years ago. We were looking at essentially value over replacement for wide receivers based on receivers being injured and fill-in backups coming in, and how much that ended up hurting the teams overall. So that was just looking at the whole range across the range of starters. And so saying that the average effect is low doesn't necessitate that the extremes can be quite high, I guess.
Yeah.
Also, but I think also it's the fact that you're right. Like it's hard. It is hard to sort of break down, well, what's the wide receiver versus what's the system versus what's the quarterback.
Yep. I wholeheartedly agree with that. And you guys talked about that on your podcast too. Such a hard, it's insofar as coaching, like it's just extremely hard to untangle all of those. In a game of football. That's why the plus minus models in football are all trash, because there's not enough data to really untangle any of that.
Yeah, Andy, people that try to treat football like baseball are going to have a bad time. There's just too many going on at one time, Yeah.
Do you want to finish our roundup, Andy? How was the last weekend for you? Any sort of key takeaways? Was it good? Was it bad? Sort of break even? How'd you get on?
Yeah, Arizona. Everybody on Arizona. That was a nice spot. Easy. And that was one too where they just kept going down. They played bad. Like Arizona didn't play that well. They just kept kicking field goals. They couldn't finish drives. I mean, the Giants defense has played up here, but it was one of those where I didn't even care. I'm like, I don't think the Giants are going to do anything today. Like the Arizona can win this 10-0 right now. It never felt like it was in doubt. I guess, I shouldn't say played bad. They won the game. They scored quite a few times. It was just maybe some red zone variance there. But that one felt good. Yeah, Daniel Jones, we talked about that last week, Drew and I, if his hammy isn't right, he might be a bad quarterback. Like that takes away a big chunk of his game. Those designed runs have been great all year, and that was one that came to fruition. My worst beat probably was it wasn't a bad beat, but it felt ugly, was the Minnesota-Tampa over. Just all the missed kicks, all the missed opportunities there. I felt like there should have been more points there. Second halves were good, and last night was a lot of fun. We took a second half over, and both teams covered that by themselves, which we had no idea that was coming. That game got out of hand in a hurry.
What did you like? I took that second half over as well, and I know Jeff Ma was on it also. Actually, I mostly took it. I leaned there, and I took it because he liked it. But what did you like so much about it?
The number.
Without giving away the secret sauce.
We weren't watching the live numbers, and we thought it was going to come in higher. And we were saying, if this comes in too high, maybe an under. And then it's like 23.5. And there was a point where we're getting plus money on 23.5 overs. And you kind of have to play this at this point. Like it's a little too low. And then just bing bang. And it was funny. We had the conversation when they missed the kicks. Like, are we going to get screwed out of this on missed extra points? And little did we know, like an hour later, there'd be 40-some points scored.
You guys knew 24 was divisible by 6 too. So you're fine.
Just get there the hard way.
Right, let's get on to some of the games this week. First up on the board, we've got the LA Chargers at the LA Raiders. This one opened up at -3 on the Raiders, and a bit of action's actually pushed them out to -3.5. A couple of points have come off the total. It did open at a big 55. It's now dropped down to 53. A slight lean back to the over, but not enough to move it back just yet. I think the Raiders, there's kind of been a couple of instances where they've looked all right, but then they've looked really bad in other spots as well. There's not really much to play for the Chargers, but an interesting divisional matchup, I guess. Eric, you can kick us off with this one. What do you make of the numbers here?
I think it's more or less spot on. I mean, when these teams played in LA, it was, I believe, Raiders -1 when it closed, and the Raiders needed a drop touchdown pass on the last play of the game to win that football game. The only thing about the Raiders that frustrates me is that I have an under 7.5 wins ticket, and I feel like that should have been a winner, and it's probably not going to be. The Raiders have, much like they did last season, won a lot of close games and kind of gotten blown out when they stepped up in class at times. So like they did last week against Indianapolis. So I don't know. I can't make much of the rate. Their defense is just atrocious. So if Justin Herbert can come to play, I think that they should be able to keep it close. But then on the other side of the coin, the Chargers just do things that are inexplicable on the regular. So this is going to be a weird one.
Wait, I just want to say, you said they get blown out when they step up in class. We're talking about a team that has beat the Saints, beat the Chiefs, beat the Browns. I mean,
that's true.
They've won the games that they're not supposed to, and they've lost some of the games you would think that they maybe could have won.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I'm resulting basically just on last week and a season ago when they, one of the reasons I really liked the under bet this year was because last season they were a 7-9 team, where if you look at the Pythagorean and you look at the fundamentals, they're probably more like a 5-11 team. So maybe that narrative's more close to last year. I mean, you do have not a multiple score loss to Buffalo, but Buffalo was up by multiple scores late in that game. You also have a 2-score loss to New England, a 3-score loss to Tampa Bay, and then getting blown out by Atlanta in that mix. But you're right. I mean, they have had good performances too. They have beaten Kansas City and hung with Kansas City in both of those games.
It's not exactly a step up in class against the Chargers, Rufus, but do you think they're good for the -3.5?
So I took it at -3. I make the line close to almost -6. The Raiders have been bad the last few games. The last 3 games, they're -7.7 in their average game grades. And I think going before that, their first 11 weeks, they were +3.3. Wait, does that math even work? Yeah, I guess there've been, how many games have there been? They had a bye week in there somewhere. But the last 3 games, I mean, they're -33 turnover points there. I mean, that's part of, the blowout to, I believe is the blowout against the Falcons. But it's hard to win, let alone keep a game close when you're on it, losing more than 10 points a game average on turnovers, unless you're the Kansas City Chiefs. And so I still think even though this is recent and it is more indicative of who they are than 3 weeks early in the season, remember, we still can't throw out who they have been. And I think Josh Jacobs didn't play last week, did he?
No, he played against.
He was just joking.
Okay, Twitter. I was I saw some Instagram thing.
What the hell? I was
I thought I saw him. I swear I saw him. But
yeah, he's just being
okay. Oh, that's awesome, by the way. But yeah, I mean, and I'm just low on the Chargers also. I mean, let's see. They have not had an above average game grade in their last 6 games. Basically, they've been I'm trying to see what my note says. It says plus 15 turnover points in the last 6 games too. So they've gotten a little bit, I can't read my own handwriting. They've been a little bit fortunate in turnovers there too. But I'm just, I'm low on the Chargers. And I think the Raiders, I think I'm buying them low essentially.
And what about yourself, Andy? Anything on the Raiders?
Yeah, I've had to downgrade the Chargers a little, although I'm treating the Raiders with a bit of trepidation based on just some sketchy results they've had here and there. So, they're like the Bizarro Raiders. Like Rufus brought up, they win these games against some good teams. They've lost some other games. It's been a weird deal with them. I can't get on the right side of their totals. Their defense stinks. And then this is another one where I probably will just stay away because my numbers are closer to market than Rufus's. And then we had some injuries there on the Chargers offensive line that I'm a bit worried about. And then you had 2 concussions for the Raiders. Concussions in short weeks aren't great because it's harder to get those guys cleared out. And especially I got to check on, and maybe one of you guys knows if Farrell's shoulder is feeling better. If we're going to be missing some players on the offensive line for the Chargers, I'd like Clelin Ferrell playing. I think he's probably going to be okay, but a lot of injury stuff here. And not excited about late season Thursday Night Football at all.
Anything for you guys on the total?
I agree with the move down. I mean,
can you
55?
Yeah, 55. Damn, how did I miss that?
But I mean, at some point though, if this gets down, I mean, at what point do you guys bet the over? Because I think the Raiders defense is awful, and the Chargers have played 2 was it 2 consecutive or 2 or 3 consecutive under games when they, historically, for the most of the season had played over games. Does that play in? I mean, eventually you got to think that Herbert gets a little well here after a couple bad weeks in a row.
All right, I think, Eric, you probably hit the nail on the head when you said it's just going to be a weird game. It will be an interesting one to watch, but we'll get on to the Buffalo Bills at the Denver Broncos, and this one is -5 on the Bills despite traveling to Denver. I think a few people like that number. They did move off the -6, and the total's gone up 48-50. Eric, you said it as well. You talked about the Bills last week before the Steelers. It looked pretty easy, not the best Steelers that they can be or anywhere close to it, really. A lot of love for Josh Allen and his team so far this season. Good or interesting to see how well they do. Andy, I'll start with you with these. Is it interesting on the Bills or is it priced up too well?
Yeah, the move, I missed it, I guess. I know some smart people that got Buffalo early. Denver with the Bowie suspension and the injuries in the defensive backfield. Now another one. What is it? Duke Dawson. I think even if you're getting some pieces back, they're just cycling injuries through this defensive backfield. And you can say, there were some injuries for Pittsburgh too. Pittsburgh's defense was a lot better. I mean, just as a baseline with everybody healthy than what Denver had, even, let's say or when the season started after they got some of those injuries out of the way. So, I mean, the way this is trending, that's fine. Like laying the points, there'll be a buyback point, I'm sure, if this ticks to 7. But yeah, the people that got the early Buffalo number are looking good because just Josh Allen, if he sets his feet and plays like a normal human who understand. I've had this conversation with people before. It's like, I get it when you don't set your feet if you're constantly under pressure, but he's had these moments where he's not under any pressure. He's just rolling and he doesn't take the time to get his feet in the right position, and he overthrows somebody in the end zone just by like 5 yards for no reason. And I feel like he's starting to correct that. We've seen a lot better play from him, and a defense I was hard on for most of the year has been playing up a little. So yeah, I can't get involved at this point, but Buffalo, and probably the over as well. That I agree with the moves, and I won't be on this one.
Eric, Rufus, were you one of the smart guys that got in on the Bills early?
No, not me.
Yeah, I don't think I'd have to look and see. The thing here, though, basically, the hard part is Denver is the one remaining home field advantage, right? And as much as the Steelers are a good defense, and the Broncos are missing some players there, Fangio has done a pretty good job of limiting opposing offenses at times this year. So Kansas City just a couple weeks ago held them to 22. Last week I think most of the Panthers success was late and sort of not garbage time, but later in the game. They could give Allen some fits here, and right now on Pinnacle it's 7. It's an expensive 7, but I don't think Buffalo is the side if it's all the way to 7.
I concur there. I don't think. If anything, I would lean the direction of Denver. I make it 5. So if it gets to a true 7, I'd play it, but I'm probably just going to abstain.
All right, well, I'll get us on to our next game. Carolina Panthers at the Green Bay Packers. And this one, I think it went in a little too high from the Pinnacle trades at -9. It's dropped down to an 8.5, sorry. The total's sticking on the opening mark of 51. Division's wrapped up for Green Bay, looking for number 1 seed in the conference. I think Rodgers is looking good, obviously helped by Devontae Adams and how consistent he's been. 9 is probably too much for the market. Rufus, did you get in early on this one, or is there any interest at all?
So there is interest. I haven't played it yet. It's one I like the Green Bay side a little bit, but I think I want to see if it drops down. I don't really see much risk that it gets to double digits. I'm not super high on Carolina. They've been a pretty average offense, but their defense has struggled big time. But Green Bay has been. They're the number 1 pass offense in the league, according to my numbers, and that's. I would say if you could be, that's probably the most important thing to be good at. So they've risen pretty quickly in my numbers, even though I went. I was like many people on the analytics side. I was not particularly high on them coming into the season, but I like them in this spot.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is the most valuable player in the NFL right now per our WAR metric, and it's actually not as close as like Mahomes is to I think it's Wilson or even Deshaun Watson. I mean, Rodgers is avoiding mistakes in an unprecedented way, and that's the hard part is we saw it this week is like, can you lay more than a touchdown with that defense? Because I think that defense is especially bad. And, while defense doesn't matter that much, when it comes to like being able to, like Teddy Bridgewater and the Panthers have sort of been plucky at the end of games, trying to, in terms of being able to move the football and stay, they don't get blown out as much. So this one's tough. I'd rather take the Green Bay Packers in like a teaser at like -2.5 than I would, lay the points with them.
You speak my language, Eric. Drew made a pretty good case for Carolina if you could get a 9 or better. And I don't hate it, but at the same time, the way that pass offense is working right now against some of these secondary pieces, and you can say, well, they clinched the division, they're fat and happy. But I mean, there is no greater reward than the 1 seed right now, if you can grab that. And remember, I was talking to you about some of the breakdowns we had with the tiebreakers. And if the Rams and Saints win out, the Saints would have the tiebreaker based on like common opponent record. I'm not sure on Green Bay, but I think Green Bay would, the way their schedule fleshes out here, like if you're not shooting for that 1 seed, what are you doing here? Like make the playoffs come through Lambeau in January. That's a big advantage, even if we're not having home field advantage with the lack of fans this year. So I wouldn't think they'd play down here. Again, as a double-digit favorite, you run into this thing too if they get up, back into the 8-9 essentially is a double-digit favorite, man. It gets tricky there at the end where they don't care if they cover. So it gets tough, but you just got to roll with your numbers on it. I'm pretty much on market. I don't know what to do with this one a ton, but maybe Green Bay first half or Green Bay first half over. I would think they'd want to just come out, get this game over with, and cruise. It's kind of be the rest of their games here. They have some easy. You can say what you want about Minnesota. They're not a playoff team like that. I consider that that was kind of a weird blip. They have had a few weird blips this year. I like where they're at right now, and somebody did ask me about the MVP markets earlier, and I agree with you. Like Rodgers should win it, but he probably won't. It's just a media thing. Like you can't just take these stats. Like none of these people that are voting on the MVP award are looking at the defenses, what their EPA ranking is.
Right.
It's like baseball. The win-loss record actually matters. But in terms of the number 1 seed, I don't know who actually has the tiebreaker, but I know in my simulations though. I have Green Bay 51% to get that number 1 seed. 33 point and change for New Orleans, 11% for the Rams, and 4.7% for Seattle.
Yeah, I think we're even more. I think I'm even more spread out on that, just because New Orleans, there's actually a chance that Taysom Hill still plays against the Chiefs, right? Which would significantly reduce their odds. And then
I'm assuming he does. I'm assuming Breeze isn't back.
Really? Okay.
I don't think. Yeah. Personally, if I'm the Saints, I don't bring him back. Like, I don't bring him back. I don't want to bring him back early. You're not going to win that game anyway, probably.
Yeah. Right. And the hard part is, LA is a pretty good team, but they have to go to Seattle, which I don't think will be trivial for them. Whereas Green Bay has a tough game next week against Tennessee. That's basically their only real test until the playoffs. So maybe there's an angle here and a look-ahead spot for them against Carolina, who's kind of a lowly team. But the Panthers have gone into Arrowhead and given the Chiefs a game. They gave Minnesota a game, who Minnesota's not great, but they're not terrible either. And then, Carolina's competitive. I think that's really the hardest part about this game, is that Carolina is not a team that lays down really.
So how much of that do you think is like sort of real versus versus just what's happened so far? Like this team hasn't gotten blown out. This team plays all close games, right? And then suddenly they get blown out, or they.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's such a small sample size game. I would say though that, like, you can try to quantify it. For example, we have like coaching rankings, right? And like one of our offensive coordinators that's either top or top 5 is Joe Brady, right? And that's, like to me, there's some level of like, okay, you take a quarterback who's okay, you take a great offensive coordinator, and then the sum of the parts is probably more than the average between okay and good, right? On the offensive side of the ball. And that's kind of what we've seen with Carolina against a bad defense like Green Bay. Like those conditions are probably prime for Carolina not just putting up like 3 points, which I think is like the only way you probably are comfortable with Green Bay minus the points.
Yeah.
Right, should we let's move on. What have we got next? We've got Houston Texans at the Indianapolis Colts. I think the Texans are just done and dusted, aren't they? I mean, it looked like they just had enough at the weekend, I think. On the other side of that, I guess the Colts have looked pretty decent, maybe flown under the radar a little bit. The market was quick to take a 7 here on the home team, now up to 7.5. Total has dropped a bit, 52 to 51. Is this one for you, Andy? Are you getting involved in this? What do you make of these numbers?
I make it a 7. It sounds like Houston might get a receiver back. That would be helpful. They look awful bad. I mean, you can have the best quarterback in the league, and at times Watson definitely a top 5 guy. But the way this team plays with, I mean, how many receivers are they missing? You waived one, you had one for suspension, a couple for injury. All of a sudden, you have Kiki Kuti and he was fighting a knee injury during the week, and he's your number one guy. God bless him. He had a decent game for fantasy purposes, I suppose, if you had to put somebody like that in. But yeah, not a big interest here. If I had to play a side, it would probably be Indy. If there's a cheap 7 still, I'm not looking like you can get anything real cheap. It's starting to move towards the 7.5. I'm not huge on Indy. I haven't been at really any point in the year. Their defense was overrated, then underrated, and I don't know how much. Yeah, now it's just rated. So it depends how much. This game might just depend on Houston's motivation level. Like if they just go out there and play like they don't care anymore. And again, players don't tank, players don't quit, but at the same time, it's hard to get up for a road divisional game like this against a good team when your season is essentially over.
Well, Eric, I was going to ask you, I know you like Deshaun and kind of whenever he's in the game, they could get the points, but do you think we get into that point of the season where they've got to be safe, look after the talent? I know Andy says they're not exactly going to tank, but it could change the way they play the game. What do you think?
Yeah, this one's tough because if I thought both teams were completely motivated here, I would go Houston just because I think Watson's the best player on the field. The problem is wide. They don't have any wide receivers. They might get Cooks back, right? And, I mean, is that's one of the thoughts there. And then QT's been fine whenever he's played, and the tight ends are okay, but they can't protect anybody. And you look at Indianapolis, they have some horses up front. So I'm probably just laying off this game, even though in sort of like if this game was played 4 weeks earlier, I'm probably taking Houston.
Well, I'm pretending it's played 4 weeks earlier. I'm taking Houston here. I mean, this is one of the larger turnover luck discrepancies too. I mean, so Houston, the last basically every game except which was it except the Thanksgiving game where they they got all their turnovers. Like that game, literally, they were like plus 11 points in turnover EPA. You take that game out, they're negative 42 points on the year in turnover EPA, and Indianapolis is plus 41. That's so basically overall they're separated by more than 70 points in turnovers. Like that's, I mean, you can make all the arguments you want about like fumbles being predictive, and I mean, interceptions are a little more predictive, but I don't think Deshaun Watson I expect to be a high interception. Or like be a guy that's giving up a ton of points off of turnovers, but it's 20 points in terms of fumble luck separating the two teams. Special teams, and then 12, and then that's just defensive ones. 12 on special teams fumbles. Like so, again, yes, you're right. Like Houston might not, they might mail it in. I mean, I would think that. I mean, Romeo Crennel seems like a likable enough guy, and I feel like he's been there for 3 years now, 4 years, I guess. My guess is the team isn't just gonna they know that they want to play well for him. Again, I'm not in the locker room. I don't know the psychology of it, but I do understand the sort of the thought that, well, maybe they won't, maybe they're mailing it in, maybe, but I mean, because I guess normally, I mean, I would say that I don't know, so I'm not going to factor it in, but it's a sort of one-sided risk, right? It's I can't benefit from it. I can only get hurt from it. But I'm on Houston.
Is that true?
Thanksgiving wasn't that long ago. That offense looked like amazing for.
Well, isn't
that he done for me lately?
Isn't that a little bit? I mean, you could benefit from it because if everybody else is buying into the idea that they're tanking, right? Like, and you don't. I guess
for sure. I guess I meant just given my numbers in the market numbers.
Sure.
Like just betting that discrepancy. Yes. Maybe that's the reason that the number is where it is.
Yeah.
I get you there.
I mean, I was on, so I didn't say that I was on Houston against Chicago because I thought that number was too short. And and again, Chicago actually has, Chicago has some, does some things similarly to Indianapolis in a lot of ways. Like that would be my first, initial recoil, but football is so weird week to week, right? Like they could have looked disinterested last week and then look inspired this week. That's probably why it is, to Rufus's point, probably more noise than anything.
I've tried to look into all this stuff, and I mean, you can find stuff the last week and sometimes week 16, some marginal stuff there, but you go further back and I feel like I need better indicators in my data to say, interim coach tag, or I don't know. I feel like there's so many qualifiers. It's like trying to find letdown spots and look ahead. Yeah. Letdown spots and teams coming off of brutal, heartbreaking losses and stuff like that. I feel like just the data I have isn't enough to really diagnose any of that.
Mm-hmm. Let's move along to Minnesota Vikings at Chicago Bears, and Minnesota are up at 3.5-point favorites here. That's where they started. They're still there, 46.5 on the total. It's actually ticked up to 47. Sorry. Weird seasons, I guess, for these two. Chicago started well, fortunately, very fortunately. Minnesota kind of the opposite, a bit of a recovery now. Is not really a great deal to play for, and the season's not going to go much further than the regular season anyway. Maybe an interesting matchup, Rufus. I'll let you kick us off with this one. What do you think?
Is Minnesota out of it? I have to literally look. Yeah, I guess 22%. I have them. Their playoff odds 22%.
Yeah.
Chicago 20%, basically, yeah. I make this number 2.1, and I actually have a slight. I mean, I haven't played any totals yet, but if anything, I mean, I make the total only 43 there, so I show some undervalue, but I don't have anything intelligent to say about the game now.
Eric, I think was it you on Twitter? I saw that had laid off the Vikings. Is this 1 week where it could worry you again? Could it turn that around, or do you think you're safe and this one maybe is a stretch too far for them as well?
A couple weeks ago, I said that Vikings not to make the playoffs at minus 250 or something, 270 was what had some value. I had it more minus 330 or something. And, then they win at home against Jacksonville in overtime, and everybody was like, you look like an idiot. And I'm like, okay, well, and now I think, what is it, minus 400 or something like that? I think that this Vikings team is and Rufus, I think you pushed back, and I think rightfully so, a number of times this year. I don't think that they're terrible. And I think that they could handle Chicago here. It's just when they step up in class, it's just, it sticks out like a sore thumb how many loose ends they have, kicking game, pressure against the quarterback, all that kind of stuff. It looks bad. Is Chicago the team that'll sort of expose those? I don't think so. I actually, if anything, would lay the points with Minnesota here, but I'm probably going to stay away just because, until it maybe gets to a flat 3, if it ever does.
You're not a Trubisky truther?
I'm not. I mean, we have to learn our lessons about Mitch, right? Last year he had a brilliant Thursday night game against Dallas, right? And then everybody was like, oh, wait, you guys buried him too quickly. And then he had a great week 1 against Detroit, this year. And, he had a great week, whatever, against Detroit last week until he didn't. And, it's it's the same thing. It's like you so inconsistently inaccurate, right? And you just can't win with that. I think the Vikings probably win this one and make it a little bit interesting in the NFC.
I care about winners, and all I know is that Mitch Trubisky has a better win-loss percentage in his career than Deshaun
Watson. Probably Kirk Cousins too, frankly.
Yeah, did they make a mistake drafting Trubisky over Watson? My God, that would have been that's just, they're never going to let that die.
I think they made a mistake by benching him for Foles, though.
Oh, I completely agree with that. Like, what do you gain? Yeah.
That felt like one of those things where, like the quarterback or the running back you trade for, you force him into the offense, or with Gettleman forcing Saquon on the offense, basically coming down from whoever, we drafted this guy, we have to use him. It felt like we traded assets for this guy. Like the fact that they traded for him with Jameis and Cam and other people just out there in the free agent market, the fact that you traded for him, I felt like maybe forced their hand a little. And yeah, he wasn't good. Mitch isn't good. The play calling isn't good. Allen Robinson is good. And they might have a couple of decent tight ends. And against a bad secondary, they might be able to move. But this Bears team has been so up and down for me. And the same with Minnesota. You can say what you want about the Bears defense. It has been good at times. I don't know how they'll perform here on the road. I make it value on the Bears as well, but I probably will avoid this. I don't like betting against Minnesota right now. Just their offense is good. It can move. The Tampa Bay defense stymied them at times, but I feel like they have, outside of who's your guy, who's your leak, Murphy Bunting.
Yeah, he was brutal.
Outside of him, he was fine. It was, I think they did a fine job at times, especially once they get down closer to the goal. So, I would agree with Rufus too. Probably slightly into the under here.
All right, well, our next one I think will be pretty interesting. Seattle Seahawks at Washington Football Team, and the Green Bay one might have been a little bit high from the traders. I think the Seattle one might have been a little bit low in this, a -4 initially, quickly out to -5.5, now pretty evenly split. No surprise to see most of the action on the handicap. I think there's been a little bit of money on the under, 46.5. I think it was 45.5. I'm guessing 1, 2, or maybe all three of you got in early on Seattle, or maybe someone's going to stake their claim and suggest the other side is the play for this one. Who wants to take the floor?
I bet Seattle. I got a 4. That was a Sunday grab. That was a number we just couldn't quite make. Let me pull up my power numbers on that one. I think that was something I ran even without adjustments. That number's a bit off. I don't care about the Alex Smith thing, I guess. I'm not sure what the extent of that. They said the x-rays were it wasn't like something long-term bad with whatever
he's
they
expected to play, it sounds like.
Structurally, but they said maybe a calf injury. So it's not like he's young Alex Smith and he's super mobile anyway. So if the calf injury hampers him, even better. This is a big step up in class. I couldn't make it 4 with my numbers, even with some upgrades in Washington. And this is like over the last 3 weeks, this is a top 5 defense. Like the way they've played. Everything they're doing. Drew just made a nice little chart on that as far as even run and pass EPA versus it's electric what they're doing. I do worry a little about Seattle against a pass rush that can absolutely get home. Not just, the presumptive defensive rookie of the year, but Sweat, Bostic picking up all the slack all over the field. They have a lot of good pieces. This could be a scary defense if they add some more. The offense doesn't scare me a ton. I don't know with Gibson if that turf toes continue to hamper him, but Seattle should be able to. It's not going to be a track meet, but Seattle will score on this defense regardless of the pressure. I think 4 was a gift, and I'm not betting it at 6 certainly.
There was a grimace there, I think, Rufus, at the intro into this game. Is it Washington that makes sense for you? Or?
No, neither side. I mean, I make it 5.5, so I don't have a play. But no, Sweat. Like, did you see Sweat against the Steelers when Roethlisberger threw it right? Like, literally, it was like a wall. He couldn't get it by Sweat. It was, but the Redskins. I mean, the Washington football team, which is my team, has made me think a little bit about so Jack Del Rio, a defensive coordinator, has obviously sort of turned that defense around, and they have mostly the same personnel they did a year ago. I mean, you obviously had Chase Young, but I mean, they have the core of the defense they have now, and you had like terrible defensive coordinators for like years in Washington. They get someone who's got a track record of being a pretty good defensive coordinator. I mean, he's not quite Wade Phillips level, but but he can turn around a defense. And I do wonder like how much, when you have a new coach, how much you sort of, especially with the lack of off-season prep, like training time, and not just this year, but in general, now you don't have the same amount of practice time, how much you sort of see the team improve throughout the year if that coach is good. I mean, like you're seeing potentially on the offensive side with like Cleveland and Stefanski. I mean, you're seeing Baker Mayfield progress. But I think even more for a defense where it really is about cohesion and playing as a unit rather than the individual, the individual talent.
The other thing that you have in Washington is the coach was going through like chemotherapy for the first half of the season. So like, and as far as like preparation is concerned, like they were probably unable to do it as well as they normally would. So that is also something to sort of I think about. Another thing when you look at this team, and I didn't bet this game. I was a little bit concerned about Alex Smith, and it's silly to say like Alex Smith is the difference here, but this season, Smith has had a negatively graded play on less than 10% of his dropbacks.
Dwayne, what are his positive numbers?
Yeah, so that's second best in the league. He's worse at positive graded plays. Dwayne Haskins is over 20% of his plays are negatively graded. We saw what happened in the second half of that game. When you like can't hit receivers, like you can't hit open receivers, you can't play offense. And in fact, like he almost threw the game away with an interception to Jimmy Ward at the end of the game. So if Haskins plays, I think this should be a touchdown spread, to be honest with you. And despite like the relatively low prior that is Alex Smith.
We jumped on him so hard because that first game was he came in cold versus Aaron Donald and Leonard Floyd. Like, what are you going to do? The guy was going to get wrecked that day. And he has become like, he's probably median quarterback.
I mean, he's the Alex Smith we always thought he was.
Yes.
Check down Charlie.
He's back.
And the crazy thing about it, like again, quarterback wins are not really a stat, but he's won 66% of his games in Kansas City. 1 year of which they didn't even have a wide receiver score a touchdown. Part of that's his fault. But then in Washington, he was 6-3 with a relatively bad team 2 years ago, and now what's his record as a starter? Like 3-1, 4-1. I mean, it's weird. Like, and obviously it's probably not sustainable, but it is funny. Like all that team needed was a guy literally not to throw it to the other team all the time.
He's a great motivator of the defense. I think that's
yeah.
Well, Andy said they're kind of arguably a top 5 defense for Washington. And Eric, I get a question for you. If we rewind to the early part of the season, the Seahawks were scoring sort of 30 points on everyone. Russell Wilson was in the MVP conversation. What's happened there? Where's the drop-off come from, do you think?
I think some of it's variance, right? Some of it is in the early parts of the season is turnover-worthy plays where were few, but then they also weren't capitalized on by the other team. He has more turnover-worthy plays this year. I think he's actually in the top 10 in producing them. And that's something, and then teams are capitalizing on it. And I also think like the success that they had on that Thursday night game against Arizona running the football has been to their detriment a little bit. Like I think that they're reverting a little bit to the run pass formulation that they thought was successful for the last 2 years. And obviously we all know that that's not the optimal way to play football.
Yeah. All right, we'll move on to the New England Patriots at Miami Dolphins. We got Miami. They've dropped off the 3 here down to -2.5, and it's a pretty low total at 41.5. I think it opened maybe a touch higher. We mentioned at the top of the show that Miami was involved in one of those weird games against the Chiefs where the Chiefs kind of looked comfortable after a shaky start. Miami back into it in the end, and obviously the Chiefs go and get the win as they seem to do. New England had probably the most New England couple of weeks that we've come to sort of expect from them. What was it, 45-0 1 week to a 24-3 loss the next week? Sums them up pretty nicely, I think. Do you ever know what you're going to get with New England, Andy? Can you get involved with them in games like this, or do you have to just stay away?
Yeah, it sucks. All the games where I stay away from the other team, I should back New England. Like I made a big to do about how I wasn't going to back the Chargers against them because it's not a spot where I can do it with coaching mismatch, and I stay away from a 45-0 win. But Miami, the injuries there are kind of troubling because I don't think Tua's it. Man, what's Eric's encouraging? Like Tua's had some encouraging things, but he's had a ton of plays where it's like, I don't know if he's quite ready for the big time yet. I was big on him in college. I liked a lot of it, but the guy's coming off a massive hip injury into a system here, into an NFL system, in the middle of the season. And now we have Gesicki was a shoulder. And then Devontae Parker sounding bad. Jakeem Grant was hurt during the game. If they're going to be down some wide receivers here, I can't get excited about Miami, even if my numbers do make it. I'm a little off market. Like I'd make it Miami -3 or so. But with that said, that's with a full plate of receivers. So I'm probably off this one. The total is dropping. And like I just said, Miami might not have a bunch of receivers and a quarterback who's kind of iffy at times. So I'm fine with the total dropping. I guess I agree with that. I'm not betting it now. So I'm probably off this one. It's late in the year. I'm not making nearly as many bets. It's a scary time of year. It's time to bet basketball.
What about you, Rufus? How are you feeling about this one?
So this is my favorite bet of the week. I like New England. I think New England should actually be favored here. I mean, Miami has been crazy lucky this season. Their defense is generating an unreal amount of turnovers and points off those turnovers that just frankly isn't sustainable. They are, they're plus 40 points on turnovers this season, plus 17 on turnover EPA just last week. I have them on a per play basis below average on both rushing yards per play and passing yards per play on both offense and defense. They've been efficient. The turnovers have helped. They've been they've been efficient with their scoring opportunities, and vice versa, limiting teams. But I just don't think they're that good. And I think they're worse with Tua than Fitzmagic. And New England is, we've seen sort of the good and the bad out of New England. I don't know how much to make of the San Francisco and Denver games when they were on post-COVID recovery. I mean, the Ravens maybe do you see the Ravens defense yesterday? I mean, I think when a team gets hit with COVID, I think it maybe takes some time to really get back to full strength. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. My fiance is though. And so I guess I've been high on New England at times this season and also low on them at times. I feel like I'm zigging when other people are zagging on them. And here they're coming off of a really bad game, and I'm buying.
Belichick versus a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you going to do?
Right. As somebody who had a New England ticket last Thursday I don't think Goff's a rookie quarterback, but I consider him like rookie-ish. So I thought that was the angle. And frankly, I don't think Goff played well enough for that to be the reason that the Rams covered. But, the New England's interesting, right? Because they don't trust Cam. It's really funny because Cam hasn't played. He hasn't played well, but he hasn't been awful. He hasn't. He has less than 3% of his passes are turnover worthy, which people I don't think realize, given that he has more interceptions and touchdowns. He's limited negative plays in the passing game. Bird and Jacoby Myers are fairly solid players. I'm inclined to like Miami if they have their weapons, but if they don't have their weapons, then now you're talking about Tua, who, gosh, I don't know. I don't know if Tua is the right fit for the kind of weapons that the Miami Dolphins have. That's why you've seen a lot out of Gesicki over the middle of the field. That's where he likes to throw the football. Now he's hurt. It's going to be a little bit tougher. New England's defense isn't great. I don't think they're going to put a ton of pressure on him, which might be to his benefit. But I think for now, I can see both. I can see the New England side fairly clearly. But I do think Miami has some advantages weirdly in sort of the scheme. And, obviously defensively, I don't think it's just the turnovers. I do think that they can cover really well. And I don't know if New England has necessarily the horses to really press them the way that Kansas City was last week.
I think before next season, we're going to have to put some definitions in place for what actually qualifies someone as encouraging.
Right.
Eric.
Yeah. Look at Herbert though. I mean, what has happened to her? Like Herbert would you bet on Herbert now?
I mean, looking at Tua, like, I don't see. I mean, you look at him, you're like, what makes this guy an actual pro prospect? He doesn't have his arm strength is like. I mean, I guess. It's been hurt coming off the hip injury a little bit, but I mean, the balls float. Like he does not throw he doesn't have zip on the ball. And I don't know. I mean, Herbert has the measurables, but I tend to think measurables are overvalued by the system. I mean, how tall is Tua? He's not that tall either.
He's like at 6'1", 6'2", maybe.
6'1"-ish.
I mean,
I think that's a lie. That's like I don't know.
But you look historically at
money on betting on the height of Kyler for the.
Did you take the under?
I took that he's under 6 foot or whatever it was, and they measure under 5'10", I think it was, and they said, "Oh, he's 5'10" and a quarter," but it's horseshit.
But don't you think what we're seeing from Herbert and Tua is kind of in the sense of like, I mean, Herbert is not very good technically. I mean, he's producing a lot of like really bad plays, but because he has so much talent, he's producing a lot of plus plays, and we're sort of mesmerized by those. But when you add them up, you're getting a quarterback who his passer rating when clean is like 94 this year, which is like way below league average. But at the same time, like obviously the wow plays keep us tantalized by it, right? Tua at the same time, like Tua is what he's like, kind of a Drew Brees like quarterback where he doesn't have a great arm. For him, he's going to succeed in the NFL based upon processing. And right now, like he hasn't had his full complement of receivers in literally any game he started. And it's a tough game, right? Like he's still on start number 5 or 6, and I think that's where he's a pro prospect. He's a pro prospect in the sense that there have been plenty of quarterbacks in the NFL before that have succeeded with similarly, bad arms, but have processed the process really well. And he processed that really well when he was at Alabama. And the projection is that he'll eventually do that at the pros.
Yeah, that's a fair point. By the way, Justin Herbert's QBR this season is 66.6.
That's pretty good.
I expected it to be like below league average or something, but
he's been a weird case because he's made just enough high leverage plays to get the Chargers in a position to lose. On the other side of the coin, like where he'll give his defense a lead with like 2 minutes left, and then the predictable thing happens.
Right, let's get on to our next one. We've got Jacksonville Jaguars at Baltimore Ravens, and a double-digit handicap in this one with Baltimore up at -14. The total's 46.5. I'm guessing we're just going to see a bulk of that made up by the home team. Not many people are going to want to watch anything with Jacksonville in, I think, but they'll be glad they watch Baltimore against Cleveland. Got to be game of the season, I think. But interestingly, I think from that one, there was a lot of rushing from Lamar, and we kind of talked earlier on in the season, the fact that was kind of missing from Baltimore. And it's interesting maybe to think about how important that can be and how much they can take advantage of it. Eric, what do you think about that one?
Yeah, I think Lamar looked, to Rufus's point about COVID, like I think Lamar looked spry last night, like for the first time probably since, early in the season, like let's say the Kansas City game. He looked like his knees were healthy, and he didn't look like tired the way he kind of did against Dallas. So, that offense was scary when he had the football. Now they don't have good receivers, and a lot of drops and stuff. So they were sort of limited in what they could do, but when he was outside the pocket, and then those running backs are all explosive. So I don't know. Where do you guys think about the Ravens in the AFC? Are they like it's Kansas City, maybe Buffalo, Tennessee, Pittsburgh? I mean, are the Ravens in that conversation in that second tier behind the Chiefs?
Oh, 100% yes.
Yeah,
Kansas City, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Tennessee. Yeah, that's my order. Buffalo after that.
Okay, so you have Buffalo after. I can see differences of opinion on Buffalo for sure because of the high volatility that is Josh Allen and their defense.
Yeah.
Kind of
They're getting more healthy on defense, right? At least that's what people tell me.
The Ravens defense. The Ravens are like a very weak link, fragile team, right? Their offense last year had the highest wins above replacement on the offensive line of any team in the league by a lot. They lost 3 guys this year. Their wide receivers did not progress the way they wanted them to, and that they were missing tight ends. So, like on offense, they're kind of like a defense in that they don't concentrate all the bets on one player the way that like the quarterback central teams do. And so they're more fragile to things like injuries and COVID and stuff. But then at the same time, like if all those bets hit, then it's a pretty hard offense to beat. And I think, that's about, that's how you have to win in the playoffs anyway, right? Like you have to catch a good run of games. And I think Baltimore, aside from Kansas City, is probably as capable of doing that in that conference as anybody.
Yeah. I'm with you.
Yeah, I have them up there as well, especially if this is what you're going to get off the. It was tough to tell with the last couple of weeks with how they played. Like, are these people still having the teams? Maybe not, the Kansas Cities, but that next tier, they're right in that mix. And if Lamar can play like that, yeah, that's what we were missing from the team from last year, where it's like, you can do whatever you want against these lower level receivers. And if he's just going to be able to scoot for 50 scoot, that's funny because he had the scoots. Maybe we don't know. There's a lot of speculation. Could you have?
You don't run that fast when you got a scoot.
Could you write that script though when McSorley went down? McSorley gets hurt. It's 4th down, and it's like a WWF thing where he comes out of Lamar, that's his music. It was such a good game. But
imagine if Baltimore was home. Imagine what that would have been like.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Then again, if he was home, honestly, they wouldn't have been in that situation because the home toilet advantage is real. Let me tell you,
it's closer.
I
that was something. And then that play, the play where it's like, he's going to run for it, and then you saw him go over the top. He threw across his body.
That was ballsy. He had the first down running it.
Think about the emotional turmoil that a Cleveland +3 batter had last night. Because basically what you're hoping for is Hollywood Brown to get tackled by the ankles, right? Then 3 timeouts and kick a field goal, go up 2, right? And then you're home safe. And then Baker gives you a nice little drive. And then you're hoping the extra point doesn't go in by Parkey, by the way. And then, all this kind of like it was literally the worst. All the bad things that could have happened to a Cleveland batter happened.
I was a Baltimore -1 better, which was So actually, I lost the ability to be like, I got the best of it because now everybody got.
There's really no telling with that game.
Yeah, that was the thing that people had. Cleveland +3 was like just basically piling on at the end, right? Like that number was right near a pick 'em basically all beforehand. So if you laid the 3 with Baltimore and you got it, there's like no honor in that, is there?
Right, I'll get us on to our next one. We've got Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Atlanta Falcons, and another one kind of movement-wise. We've seen a fair bit on this, put up at -4. This time the early bettors have pushed it out to Tampa Bay -6 on the road. Total was up at 51.5, down to 50.5. And it's, I guess for Tampa Bay, it's kind of been a couple of poor showings this season. And it's really what's cost them. And I think they played the Saints twice, they've lost to the Chiefs as well. But it's more the kind of winnable games I think that they've had that they've lost out that's kind of been most disappointing. Atlanta have just been pretty terrible. I think the only thing of note for them is that they've thrown away a couple of games that they should have really won. Rufus, is there anything in this that interests you?
Honestly, I thought the original number was correct. 4. Atlanta is, it feels like they should be quite terrible. Just it feels like they should be like. It feels like they're a worse team than they actually are. I hate betting on them. I haven't bet on them much. I haven't bet against them much either this season. But it feels to me, it just somehow feels like they're a lot worse the team they are. They're below average. I rate them 1.3 points worse than the average team, which is not like, that's not that bad.
I'm actually with you, Ruf. I have them as even less than that. It's crazy. They're actually like the NFC's version of the Chargers, aren't they?
Except they're better than the Chargers.
Yeah, well, yes. Yeah, I think perception-wise, though.
Perception-wise. I think I have them rated like the Raiders, like maybe a half a point better than the Raiders, basically.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Tampa, Tampa, they're still they still rate pretty high, but the thought when I saw them, they were I don't know if they're still in my top 5. They were for quite a while, but the thought that Tampa is one of the top teams in the league makes me think, or they were, I guess. Yeah, they're not anymore. They're number 9 in my ratings now, but makes me kind of like, well, just give it to the Chiefs at this point. It just feels like, when you see Tampa play, like they've had some horrendous games, and it just feels like they don't have the firepower to sort of stick with the top teams in the league. But they don't have to do that this particular game. I like Atlanta +6 a little. I'm not playing it there. If it gets to a little higher, I will probably, and also it also will depend on the number I'm getting. We don't talk much about this, but I make it 3.8. I'm not going to play it at +6, especially later in the week. But if the market's +5.5 and I can get +6 and I lean that way, then yes, I'll play it. So I think a lot of it comes down to that, whether I'll be on that side or not.
Andy, what do you think the right number is here? Are you involved in this one?
Yeah, I'm not bullish. I don't think I'm bullish on Tampa compared to Rufus. I think I'm lower on Atlanta, and yeah, their defense has played up a little. It's going to be a little more of a test this week, but I'm closer to the current number. I don't have a ton of interest in this one. I think I might just be stuck with 3 games. I bet this week it's going to be and I think one might be set now. It's all Sunday, so. I was going to say it's there's somebody you talked to too, Rufus, that said he said don't bet the NFL anymore. The price is where it's supposed to be. Just buy more Bitcoin. I might be getting closer to that, but I did take some early numbers yet this week, and this was not has the total come down?
I think
a little bit. I guess that's probably pretty close to where it should be. I didn't get too involved in totals yet, except for maybe an injury one.
The Falcons are like a sneaky under team, though, aren't they? They play. This is the only pushback I have to Rufus's point about the Atlanta, because I'm with him there. I have the Bucs 3.8 points better than the average team. I have Atlanta about a half a point worse than the average team. My only pushback is the Atlanta's coaching is egregious. The amount of love that they've given to Todd Gurley, and then Brian Hill, who's his backup, is even worse, and they give him a ton of run. They have Matt Ryan, they have at times Julio Jones, and they just don't use those guys. I think if they optimally use their players, I think that they would have a shot to win this game, because I think Tampa is. I agree with you. If Tampa Bay represents the second tier of the NFL, you might as well just bet the Chiefs against the field, because they're just a very uninspiring team right now. They have they have some leaks on defense, and on offense, Brady was great the other day. He also faced pressure on 3 of his dropbacks the whole game, because Minnesota can't rush the passer. Against a real team, that's just simply not going to happen, and we might see Brady look his age.
Right, I've got one eye on the clock, but the next couple of games, I'm not going to do the NFC East chat to death, but we've got the 49ers at the Cowboys and the Eagles at the Cardinals. Is there anything out of these 2 games that interests any of you guys? I don't think there's much confidence from the market in either of the NFC East teams. I think the Cowboys went from a pick to a +3. Arizona against Philly were -5.5, now 6.5. Anyone on the other side of that and think the NFC East teams are worth it this week?
Eventually, I suppose it keeps getting bet out. I did grab San Fran at 1 -05 on the way up. I couldn't, even with Debo out forever, I can't make it that close. It's still.
You beat me. I got 1.5 -108.
Yeah. Is this Rufus, on your podcast, you talked about with Josh about matchups, right? I thought it was a great discussion about you take the power number, right, which is sort of the baseline, obviously, but there are matchups that can really skew things. And I don't think San Francisco is a great football team by any stretch of the imagination, but they run the football in a very explosive way, in a way that uniquely hurts Dallas, right? Much in the same way that we saw Baltimore on that, like, I can't remember if it was a Wednesday or Tuesday game or whatever, but like this one, I think that's the what you can attribute the line movement to, is the fact that Dallas and San Francisco are probably more equally yoked if you just look at the flat power numbers. But the Niners on offense, I do think, like, will uniquely challenge Dallas, and that's why I think the movement makes sense.
Yeah, me too. I took -108, and I make it over 4 true price.
Yeah.
Did anybody take Arizona?
I actually think
I took that over.
Did you upgrade Arizona after last week's game?
Did I?
Yeah.
Slightly. I mean,
Okay.
because their game grade was positive, but not super positive. They were what? Let's see. They were the 12th best out of 32 teams. So yeah.
I guess they kind of got more efficient as the game went on, but like they were very clunky last week, right? Against the Giants. The Giants kind of handed them the game, and they really didn't take control of it until the second half, despite how, I don't know, like that would be my one worry. The other thing is the Eagles really did put good pressure on Taysom Hill last week, and if they put similar pressure on Kyler Murray, it might be tough for the Cardinals to extend in this game. But at the same time, I think the same thing I'll say about Jalen Hurts this week as I'll say about last week. Like we need to make sure that we pump the brakes on a rookie quarterback, because he was good last week, but if you take away the running, the passing game wasn't. It wasn't a disaster, which is a huge hurdle for the Eagles, but relative to the rest of the league, it was still kind of below what you'd expect.
I completely agree with that. You got to temper your enthusiasm, no matter how well a rookie plays in their first start. It is just so hard to come in. I mean, it's easier now than it was 20 years ago, but it's still really difficult to come into this league and be setting the world on fire in your first year, in your first few starts of your first year.
What do you make that Philly number? I was hoping it would come in. I wanted to bet Arizona. I didn't give them an upgrade just because they played how they should have played. And they faced a quarterback who you take away a big weapon of his. They should have won that game. I couldn't give them much of a bump, but at the same time, I guess I was surprised it opened this high. And then I look at my numbers and it's like, shit, I'm right on here. Drew talked me into the over on the opener because of all the issues for Philadelphia's defense. Eric had a good point. The defense did play up. You can get some pass pressure, but they have a laundry list of injuries that occurred during that game. It almost, in the end, it almost cost them a nice fun upset they had there, because they were dropping like flies, and you're going to lose linebackers, coverage pieces. I think maybe even somebody along the front. And if that's the case, Arizona might just continue to win and sneak their way into the playoffs. They'd be a fun playoff fade.
By the way, I upgraded Arizona. It looks like 0.6 points. But and I took Arizona -5.5 yesterday. But what was interesting with that Philadelphia New Orleans game is it was like a flashback to 2018 season, 2019 in the playoffs. Just with New Orleans was heavily favored. New Orleans was home in that game, but New Orleans was heavily divisional round.
That's right.
That was the week of the weekend. I don't really want to remember that.
Well. Yeah, the DraftKings weekend.
Yeah, that was the game that had all the and Philadelphia went out to a big lead, and I was like, it looks like it saved me some money, and then New Orleans came back to win. But it's the kind of thing that concerns me with the New Orleans team in general in terms of their upside. It feels like they don't have that sort of explosive ability. They don't have that a lot of the other top teams do. And it's like, if their defense isn't playing great, if the defense has a bad half, they can suddenly be down double digits to like a pretty mediocre team.
Yeah, they don't have the upside on offense. Even with Breeze, it's really hard for them. They cross the street so many times on the way to the end zone that if like you get like a drop pass or a bad second down run or something, it's an issue. You were the one person in the entire world that bet the under in that New Orleans Philly game, and and it ended up hitting after an inauspicious start. Was that the?
Oh, in the sports betting national championship?
Yeah.
No, so I would have taken. I wanted the under, and my business partner wanted the side and alternate point spread, and so we were going to do that. Like, just take, like, I think we were going to be laying. I think it was like -3.5 or something at -180, or because basically it was going to go all in with. We didn't need a 50-50 shot at that point, so at least we didn't think.
Gotcha. But, that was an odd game, to say the least, right?
Yeah, if Lutz had made that field goal, I still would have been. I somehow would have eked it out.
Yeah.
But,
right, I've got just a couple more games to get through that I want us to cover off. First one should be short and sweet. The New York Jets at the LA Rams. I think the Jets have got 17 points to work with, 44 points on the total. Tell us why you're betting the Jets, Rufus.
I have an announcement to make.
You're laying the points at the Rams.
I am not betting the Jets.
Okay. Well,
you were close. I make the number 17.3.
And that's enough to stay away.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's not a whole lot else to say about this game. What do you guys think about the Jets plus like 200 to win a game the rest of the year?
I can tell you right now, I ran my Sims this morning. Jets to win 0.5 games or more. 52.2% to win a game this year. I don't know. I don't know who do they play? How's that possible? Do they play Cincinnati or something?
No. They have Browns at home and Patriots on the road after this.
Yeah, and I'm low on the Browns, and yeah.
Yeah, I think that Patriots one's sneaky. I think as Andy says, players don't tank, but Bill could tank in week 17. The screw is like,
out of it.
If it's between the Jets getting the number 1 pick and the Jags out of division getting the number 1 pick. I feel like he would tank that game.
Oh, you are so right there. That is crafty. Right, he doesn't want to face Trevor Lawrence.
No, of course he. Yeah, and
that is the right move there. And Bill would do it.
Yeah, he almost did it in the Monday night game. He almost, he basically Cam took him back from the dead.
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up. I think Andy's had enough. Any quick thoughts?
I have that effect on people.
Probably the biggest game of the weekend that we haven't had time to sort of do any sort of proper analysis on. But the Chiefs at the Saints, we're down to the flat 3 on the Chiefs. Is there? I know, Rufus, you've been fond of the Saints, but obviously some quarterback uncertainty. It seems like Breeze isn't going to come back for this one, and they're going to play it safe again. What do you think on this one?
So I just assumed Breeze wasn't coming back when I saw that line. Yo,
just rolling in time, Andy.
Nice quickie.
I guess.
Eric. The Minnesota background there. Nice.
Does he fall in the snow?
Yeah, I'm literally outside. But yeah, we're back.
You're tough. Like, you don't even have a jacket on. I'm impressed.
He just didn't want to hear about the Jets winning another game or a game.
What's your percentage that Breeze plays a game before the playoffs? Because I said 50-50 that he's not back during the regular season, and Drew thought I was kind of crazy.
In my sim, I literally just put 50% week 16, 50% week 17. Very scientific.
And then I brought it up, and I said, my dad broke his ribs when he was in his 20s. The guy was in good shape, and he was a baby for 6 weeks. Like, he couldn't breathe right for the first couple weeks. Breeze is a 41-year-old man. Seems like a bad injury that they're kind of downplaying.
If I'm the Saints, I want to wait till he's full strength, because the only real chance they have of going far is having him be fully healthy and being able to actually, I don't know what the rust factor will be, but if he's limited, was it 2 postseasons ago or last postseason? I don't even remember. It feels like every year in January, Breeze is tired at the end of the year and they falter.
Yeah. The other thing that's to note is that there's probably not a ton of a difference between being the 2 and the 3 seed this year.
Yeah.
If they think that the 1 seed is out of their reach, then it's the difference between playing basically it's the difference between Arizona, Minnesota. It's not really I don't think that they're really that afraid. Although Minnesota's had their number before.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's home field a little bit, but to that point, there's diminishing returns compared to actually shooting for that one, considering instead of the two.
Yep.
Yeah, but I assume that Breeze isn't coming back, because I make the line 3 with Taysom Hill as the starter. What do you got? You guys samesies? Ish.
I have I make so it's 2.4. I think I have some hybrid of Breeze and Taysom in there though.
I have Taysom in. I'm like 3.2.
Yeah, I want a hybrid of Breeze and Taysom.
Yeah, that
Taysom's running ability and Breeze's.
Yeah, that's like one of those Instagram pictures where it has like Jameis's brain and fucking Taysom's legs and Drew Brees' arm.
Taysom's Hill blackmail material.
Yeah. Let's call it a day, guys. That's most of our games for for game week 15. Even my voice is going now. A big thanks to the guests for coming on today, Andy, Eric, and Rufus. A pleasure as always, and thanks for sharing some of your expert insight. And obviously, thanks to everyone for tuning in as well. Good luck with any bets for this weekend, and remember to always gamble